Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you are all around the world coming in. I am super excited for this session. This is going to be what I've been looking for all week. Three of my closest friends I see on the road everywhere, some of the smartest brains in our industry that are going to wrap up everything in 45 minutes. They got all the things they can do for themselves. I got Clay, I got Lynn, I got Barbara. She's healthy, she's back. I'm so gracious to have you guys. Thank you so much. And Brian.
Beautiful. This is our powerhouse closing keynote that is going to put a bow on the Responsive Nonprofit Summit. We are going to be talking about masks, moonshots, and CRQs, radical acts of generosity. And we're going to be talking about what does it mean to be a responsive fundraiser that thinks differently. And in this session, we're going to celebrate you, everyone tuning in, everyone watching, and about what the generosity that you pour out, how does it flow back into you, and how can you take all the learnings from the last 3 days and move back into the world? Welcome to the Responsive Nonprofit Summit, Clay, Lynn, and Barbara.
No pressure, guys.
Hi, everybody.
I'm doing tech over here, Lynn.
Good morning, afternoon, evening. We're so excited to have you on behalf of Clay and Barbara and myself. We are pumped to talk about you and fundraising and everything that is good with the world. So we're going to let Clay get us set up on our slides. But Barbara, if we had one word to describe a nonprofit fundraiser, what's your word today?
Oh gosh, I have more than one word, but I start with champion. Champion.
I love it.
Right?
I love
What's your
it.
word?
My word is superhero. They
Oh,
just
yeah.
have superpowers that
Unbelievable.
transcend. But also, I think that fundraisers are big believers. So those of us who work in this industry, we believe. So today, we're going to take you through a conversation that we want to bring to you around moonshots and masks and DRQs and fundraising being life. So many of you have seen Ted Lasso. I am waiting to watch all of season 3, which is the ultimate season. But one of the things that always inspires me about fundraisers is their belief in their cause, belief donors are inherently good people and fuel generosity across the world, and also belief in their why. So we're going to start today by discovering how we translate those beliefs into the work we do. So what I want everyone to do is two things. Everybody who's out there watching, I want you to, in the chat, in one word, tell us what is your why. And then you can tell us your why you work in nonprofit story. But what is your why? And so for me, you guys are going to laugh. And I know that Clay and Barbara are both going to laugh at this. But tell us in the chat, what is the one word that describes your why? Why are you working in nonprofit? For me, it boils down to Planters cheese balls. That's my why. And for anybody who knows that story, you'll understand it completely. But we all have a why. We all have a reason. So first, give us your word. That's what's your why. And then give us why you work in nonprofit fundraising. I think sometimes those of us that work in this space, we give so much of ourselves. We care, we empathize, we work, we are tireless in our pursuit. And sometimes we can forget our why. And so I want you all to think about your why and spend a moment reminding yourselves why you got into this field, why you stay in this field, even though sometimes it's difficult and sometimes it's pure joy, right? But what's your one word why, right? And so that's what we're going to explore today. we've been through a lot. And as we go through this conversation together, and Clay's going to find me a new slide that'll be Ted Lasso related, right? And you all think deeply about your why. I also want to have a conversation about recognizing your potential. So there's so many leadership lessons we can all learn from each other, but also from Ted and the cast of Ted Lasso. But one of the things that we can do is recognize that fundraising, nonprofit work is a labor of love. It is a vocation more than it is a job. It is a career, a calling, many, many things. But we also have to recognize that fundraising and nonprofit work can take a chunk out of who we are. We often sacrifice parts of ourselves to do this work. And so, really thinking about, especially those of us who over the last 3 years have been facing multiple pandemics at once. And folks, alert, we have got to get Erica an Apple TV password so that we can get her access to Ted Lasso. Erica, contact us. We will get you your access, and we will help you out because you need a little lasso in your life because it will bring joy. So, over the last 3 years, we didn't just face a pandemic in COVID-19. That was just one of the pandemics that you have been at the center at as a nonprofit professional, as a fundraiser. We've gone through racial unrest, continued racial unrest, and emphasized racial unrest, economic uncertainty, a lack of civility and the ability to have civil discourse. And we also are facing a great resignation in our industry, great resignation in many industries, in fact. I don't know if you've been to a sit down restaurant recently, but oh my, is that experience different post pandemic or currently than it was 4 years ago? Where have all the great servers gone? I think they've all gone to Vegas because there's still great service in Vegas sometimes. You just have Clay saying, no, they all left there too. All this to say is that we are facing all of those things simultaneously. At the same time, you're trying to thrive or survive, you're taking care of yourself and your family. And so I just want you to take a moment, to take a deep breath and recognize that you are a whole human and you deserve some grace for what you're going through. So as Clay moves us onward, one of the things I want to focus on today that will tie in to the rest of the time that we have together is a little bit about masking. Now, I don't know about you all, but I didn't know what an N95 was 3 years ago, and I was really happy about that. I didn't know much about clonal antibodies, and I didn't know vaccines or anything, but I kind of feel like I know way too much now. And there's a reality show in that, but it won't be funny. That now when someone says mask, I don't think of a Mardi Gras mask. I think of the protective mask. And if only I had known that if I wore a mask on planes, I wouldn't have gotten sick for the 7 years that I spent 300 flights a year flying. It would have been great to have known that previous to this. However, I'm talking about the mask that your flight attendant isn't wearing. It's the one that she or he or they are telling you about. And that is the key thing for those of you who listen to your flight attendants. When an emergency happens, they always say, put your mask on before helping others. And so I'm going to challenge all of you to think about how you're putting on your mask, how you're doing self-care. As a person who never did self-care, I am now indulging in self-care regularly, whether it be seeing my psychologist, taking time to Zoom with friends, having a great meal, baking biscuits for the boss like Ted Lasso does. But really, self-care is about whatever you can do to take care of yourself. And it is just as, if not more so, important than any of the other work you do. I remember pre-pandemic, I would go to work sick as a dog. I mean, not that dogs are sick, but sick. Right now, I take my sick days. I don't take mental health days. I just take days that I need, right? But the idea here is that we're all going through it. And we have been called, or we chose this vocation because we're deeply rooted in our why. And if we don't take care of ourselves, we can't help the others that we want to take care of. So, as I pass this baton on to my co presenters, I really want you to think about how being yourself, authentically yourself, and allowing grace for others to do the same is also self care. So, there's a character in Ted Lasso named Jamie Tart. Not only is he hot and has been on a reality dating show, but he's quite the good kicker in football, as they say, or sports ball, as Clay references. And Jamie's got no problem with humility, if you know what I mean. He's got quite the ego. And he says, Coach, I'm me. Why would I want to be anything else? And Ted says, I'm not sure you realize how psychologically healthy that is. Or as Oscar Wilde might say, be yourself. Everyone else is already taken. And so, how do you make room for both yourself and others in this inclusive landscape so that we can be wholly ourselves all the time and not have to wear a mask over who we are authentically? Clay, tell us a little bit about identity and moonshots.
So, right. We talk a lot, and there's so much. I'm so excited about this summit because when they reached out and asked us, I actually blocked my calendar, which is rare, and did some self-care, and I got to sit in a bunch of sessions, and it is kind of mind-blowing because they sort of gave us the framework of where to go, and how many of the sessions and how many of the chats, and I'm seeing a lot of you comment that have commented in other sessions that I've been in as well, how much all of this is tying together, because it is, in many ways, it's such an exciting time to be in the work that we do, the impact work, the connection work that we do, because we know so much about identity and who we are. So you didn't realize that this session was going to be a 1980s all skate and multiple audience participation points. So before I really jump into this, excuse me, what I would like for you to do, in addition to Lynne's writing down your why, is whether you do it on a piece of paper, scrap paper on your desk, put it on your phone, however it is you take notes. But I really would like for you to take a minute to invest in writing this, in committing this to some medium. And if you're comfortable with it, please feel free to put it in the chat if you would like to. But I also would like for you to remember this and come back to it. So when I ask you, how do you think of yourself as being a good or a moral person? What are three adjectives that come to mind when you think, I'm a good person, I'm a moral person, right? They can be anything that comes to mind immediately. Don't give it too much thought. Just write down three adjectives, and you'll see in a little bit how they connect back to that why that Lynne talked to us about. And while you're thinking about that and you're writing that down, how many of you have ever done this? Because, see, I think I'm a pretty talented fundraiser. That's not an adjective, I know, but I think I'm pretty good at what I do. But anybody ever sent a 5,000 piece mailing out, very warm and fuzzy, invested tons of time into just getting the right language down, and we were investing in this donor relationship, and we send out 5,000 printed pieces that all say, "Dear salutation." Been there? Done that? Anybody else done the thought that you were using the test version of the email send, but you were actually doing the real, and you sent the multi-edited versions to donors 12 times in one day? Yeah. So there are times when, and as Lynne said in that Venn diagram, we're sitting in the middle of all these crises, in the middle of all these pandemics, and we're trying to muddle through it, and we're trying to hold on to ourself and our self-concept, right? And we do think of ourselves as good, moral people, but we also kind of think of ourselves as, that was really dumb. Anybody else still feel guilty about calling their third grade teacher mom? Yeah, we've been there. We've been there. We carry these thoughts simultaneously, that we think of ourselves in certain ways. And this is true of all humans, that we think of ourselves in the positive, but we also think of ourselves in the negative as well, right? I am a insert profanity here, who sent out 5,000 mailed pieces that said "Dear salutation." But I also think, for me, I think I'm funny. I think I'm smart. I think I'm nice. did that action disprove what I think about myself? How do I approach it? Because the reality is that all humans walk around thinking of ourselves, positive, inclusive, and loving. Michelle, thank you for that. Yes, good. So exciting time to be a fundraiser because there is so much research and so much knowledge, and we've gotten so much of it this week already. I am particularly inspired by the work of Drs. Adrian Sargent and Dr. Jen Sheng at the Institute for Sustainable Philanthropy. And one of the things that they have really studied is the psychological literature and the psychological knowledge we have about how humans think and the impact on generosity. And when the studies are done and when people are asked, what are the 3 adjectives that you think of yourself as a moral person? These are the ones that come up the most in the scientific studies. I think of myself as generous, friendly, kind, caring, compassionate, fair, trustworthy, hardworking, and helpful. And sometimes if I really need to get something from Barbara, I go, ooh, you're so hardworking. And it works every time, right? We can actually use this kind of language in how we frame talking to donors. And we talk, looks like the Boy Scout law, Eric, yeah? We talk about how this relates to donors, but we don't talk about how identities relate to us as fundraisers, because we are an equal part of that equation as marketers, as communicators, because we are walking around carrying these identities of ourselves as kind, friendly, generous, loving. Michelle, I'm going to hold on to that one for a while. That's beautiful, right? We walk around thinking of ourselves with these identities, in addition to my finance director hates me because I can't get a budget done. The board's mad at me. There's too much to raise. We've got 2 months left in the fiscal year, and I'm sitting here on a conference when I should be working. All of those things, we carry them simultaneously. So how do we bring our identities forward? And how do we bring them into the work that we do? Because the work that we do is so big. It's so big. I don't know if you're familiar with this book. I said in a session earlier that this summit this week has been really, really bad for my book budget. And Amazon, I think, now has a direct line to my house. But this one really resonated with me, Moonshot, on how we look at our nonprofit missions. Because if we think about it, our missions really are dreams that someone somewhere said, hey, there is a problem in the world, and I think I can solve it. I think we can solve it. I think we can bring the community together and do something about this. So the start of our missions, and whether we're a tiny little organization with one person who's doing everything, or we're a massive, large university or healthcare or whatever it may be that's doing everything, that core belief in what we can do really started with big, bold thinking. And if we look at moonshots, which require a rocket, which required getting to space, arguably, we would not have gotten to space without flight. We had to fly before we could get a rocket to the moon, which required a whole lot of it all started with a mouse. Thanks, Lynn. Yeah, exactly. Right? It requires big, bold thinking, and how we bring ourselves as good, kind, moral, loving, caring, smart people into this equation to look at problems and go, I am me. And I know why I do this, and I believe that I can do anything. So we're looking at a problem in front of us. We're going, we need to get from here to there, right? From A to here. Well, why do we need to get over there? Good strategic planning, right? We've all talked about it and done it. Well, we need to get over there because there's better stuff over there. Okay, good. What's stopping us? A big old mountain and some scary bears. I know, right? So what do we know? What are the facts? What are the data that we have that we know about getting from here to there? Well, the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. There are some in physics that will argue that, but go with me here, right? There's fewer bears if we jump over them too. So what do we need? Well, basically we need a straight line. Oh my God, what if we could fly? Right? So bringing our identities in to tackling the big, bold ideas that come to us, that look at a problem and think, how can we tackle it? Because see, the Wright brothers, when they started in on this idea of wanting to learn to fly, nobody had done it before. They weren't the only ones doing it. Here's the interesting thing. The Wright brothers did not have college degrees. They were not engineers. They owned a bicycle store. And they got caught up in this craze at the time of everybody wanting to learn how to fly. There were multiple people and groups all over the world doing it and trying it and trying to figure it out. So they have this very successful bicycle shop, and they're out trying to fly, and they were kind of the Elon Musk of the day, right? They're running a successful business, but they're trying to get space. It's essentially kind of the same analogy there. So now I think I lost connection there for a minute. Can you see me okay still? Can you still see the screen? Excellent. Good. Okay, good. Thank you. Sorry about that. Sorry. So Wright brothers, flying. Right. They owned this bicycle store. And at the time, bicycles were a big deal. This wasn't just, exercise or a hobby. We had gone from what they called bone busters that had no rubber on the wheels. The seats were hard. The thing that changed transportation was the invention of the chain that connected the tires together. And that made a revolution in how bicycles were done, because now we could have two wheels of the same size. This was huge, and it was the craze. And it was a little equitable because women could ride bicycles too. So they are jump on this craze. They have no business experience. They have and then they jump into, because they've made some money, they jump into trying to learn how to fly. Now, quick side note, as is so often true in history, the boys are out trying to learn how to fly, did not have college degrees, were not engineers, which means somebody had to be running the business. Yeah, their sister, the Wright sister, was back in Cleveland running the bicycle business, sending them money while they're out essentially crashing bicycles on beaches. So bicycles in a dress. Yes, Lynn, this was also some of the beginning of the first that we saw of women being able to wear split skirts, and then the evolution of pants. So see, all these things tie together. Right. So the Wright sister and my fellow Gen Xers may remember the Animaniacs here and go, and the Warner sister, right? I always have to say it anyway, that way too. So yes, so shout out to the women that are doing the hard work and the emotional labor and funding the boys who are out playing and crashing bicycles on beaches, which they did multiple times, many, many times over. And they kept at it because they were convinced that they could do it. And the thing that separated the Wright brothers from the other, and the Wright sister, from the others who were doing it, was they were watching birds. And they watched the shape of birds' wings as they flew across beaches, as they glided. And they began to shape the wings of their tests and their prototypes on the shapes of the birds. And that was the magic. That was the thing that brought it all together and made it happen, because they were looking at the sky and saying, what's making that fly? And we're taking big risk here. And yes, thankfully, we've got somebody back home supporting us, but we're taking big risk and we're looking up at the sky. We're not looking down at our charts. We're not looking down at the things that are tripping us up in front of us. And we are not letting those crashed bicycles stop us. Because sometimes in order to reach the moon or to fly from here to there, you might have to crash a few bicycles on some beaches first. To get to innovation, to get to change, to get to where you want to be, you might have to send out a few thousand dear salutation postcards and work through how your identity and how your approach comes into the work that we do, because we cannot do it without you. It cannot be done without you, because so you just might as well shoot for the moon, because even if you miss, you'll land among the stars. So Barbara, where do we go from here when we've got, want to crash bicycles, but we got some work to do and goals to reach?
Gosh, well, I want us to keep looking up, but I also want us to stay tied to the ground and understand where we are in this moment in time. Because it can feel so often that we are sort of, over the last few years, we have been in this constant cycle of change, whether we liked it or not, whether we wanted to or not. And it can be difficult to figure out how to balance the self-care, our putting on our own masks first, in tending to everybody else, all of the other competing demands. It can be really difficult to understand, how do we keep looking up and figuring out those moonshot ideas when we've got our never-ending to-do list of other deadlines and other activities and things that have to get done that we have to tend to. So the reality is, though, that there has to be a balance, and it is about our mindset. So Lynne talked about putting our self-care first, taking care of ourselves so that we can be better able to serve others. Clay's talked about having a big, bold idea that we can, and that we keep testing, which I'll talk about as well. And so it becomes then this mindset of how we balance not either or, but both and. So we can't keep in this this cycle of one option or the other, because in fact the reality is, and we can go to the next slide please, it is a both and mindset. It is the key to resilience of how we are thinking about and being able to be nimble to adjust to the shifting sands that we are standing on. We can have a better frame of reference, a better lens through which we are looking at the world, because it is not a fixed set of options. We also then can build the confidence to turn the impossible into the possible, because we have a number of different options that we can be looking at, that we can be considering, and that we can understand our possible ways forward. Tim Arnold, in his book Lead with And, spoke so brilliantly about 6 unavoidable tensions that he has seen in his own leadership coaching. I want you to put in the chat which ones you resonate the most with you. When I first heard Tim speak, there was one in particular that really hit home a little bit too closely for me. For me personally, it was having expectations and extending grace, particularly for myself, but also in as I think about managing teams and working with colleagues. But Lynne talked about the tension between caring for others and caring for yourself. Clay talked about the tension between being optimistic and realistic, especially in the example with the Wright brothers. Yes, profit and purpose, absolutely. This is something for in nonprofit settings. It's not profit, but it's how do we think about money? How do we understand the donor relationship and bring in philanthropy into our mindset as organizations. So I want us to focus in addition to whatever one might be particularly resonating with you, and the two that we've just talked about in Lynne's and Clay's sections. I want us to really draw attention to embracing change and preserving stability, because this one too is a perfect example of the last few years, right? We've all had to change, and we've all had to figure out what do we preserve in the status quo, and it's one that is not an either or. So where do you find yourself on this continuum? Do you find yourself on the frozen and failing, where you are holding on to for dear life the status quo, the stuff that you've always done, and you're stuck because you can no longer adapt to the swirling tides of change that are around us? Are you on the other end of the spectrum of that constant change, where you are now pirouetting around in a sea of chaos? Or are you somewhere in between, where you are recognizing that there is change that is necessary and that is possible, but there are other things that have stood the test of time that should be held onto? So that's your current and confident state. So where do we even begin? How do we find ourselves in that nexus of balance between change and stability? Well, there are a few steps to take. First, and I want to draw reference really from Jim Collins's book, Good to Great, which offered some incredible insights into the tactics, the actions, the mindsets that every great company embodied, from their good state to what they became as these brands that we know and love. The first was, you might call it the Stockdale paradox. You might call it Pollyanna optimism, but it's retaining that faith that you're going to prevail in the end, regardless of what comes. Think about it. Here we are, May 11th, 2023. Think about where we were May 11th, 2020, and everything that we waded through and navigated through. And here we are, right? So we have prevailed to some degree, and we will continue to do so. And we are emerging as different people, as more enlightened, as changed people in some way, shape, or form. So hold on to that faith that when you send out that 5,000 mailing postcards with dear salutation, things are going to be okay. And you will figure out what lessons to learn from that. Also, confront those brutal facts. Pull the filters off and understand what's the good, bad, and ugly that you're facing. And what, again, can you learn from that? Where can you evolve out of to become the next version of yourself? Also, Jim talks about the bus, the bus metaphor of who's on the bus, who's off the bus, who's in the right seats, wrong seats. Where are you, both in your career, both in your nonprofit organizations, and fundraising as a whole? Where are you on the bus? Are you even on the bus? And are you in the right place? Take stock in those three core questions, but I want to add a fourth. And I want to pay tribute to a friend and colleague of ours who was a nonprofit thought leader, a legend really in our sector, Simone Joyaux. And she talked about the CRQs, those cage rattling questions. She herself was the queen of the CRQs. And I want to challenge us to carry these CRQs forward. These are the questions that are driven out of curiosity, that are really pushing the envelope a little bit more, that are asking the questions that probably, quite frankly, are on many of our minds, many of our nonprofit leaders' minds, our boards' minds, that people might be afraid to ask. It's challenging the status quo, saying, what else can we be doing differently? What can we be doing more of? What no longer serves us? But these CRQs are also drivers for how we can share. We don't live in silos in our sector. So how do we surrender and share our privilege and our power and our resources so that collectively we can be a stronger sector? So those are four core questions to be thinking about. Where does this come into your own professional careers and your own professional responsibilities as fundraising leaders? And I want us to all embrace that word leader, because no matter your title in your organization, you are a driver for change and innovation in your organizations, in helping to advance philanthropy in all of the ways and generosity in all of the ways. So stop thinking about that mindset of we've always fundraised like this. We've always done it this way. If you're reflecting on your own personal career path, I've always done this. I've always been in this kind of fundraising. That to me is death by 6 words. You will never get out of that frame of mind if you keep holding on to those 6 words. If you're thinking about this in a fundraising context, then going back to what Clay's domain is, data. Use the data to inform where you are in your own professional fundraising careers. Think about what are the things that have brought you the most joy? What are the things that get you excited? To Lynne's question, what is your why? Why do you keep showing up in this space? And build off of that. Be like Picasso. So Picasso was a great stealer of ideas, and he made them his own. And in fact, little known fact, Cubism was born out of his imitation of Cezanne. And then he brought in African and Iberian art mask art, and then he sprinkled in his own creativity, and here we have a completely different art genre. So you have had the last few days of incredible thought leaders and experts and a brain trust that you can lean on and lean into. Take the expertise, take the learnings, and bring it back into your own settings to with your own experiences and skills and talents and ideas and creativity, and make it your own and advance this into your own career growth and your own fundraising success. And finally, test and innovate, right? These are words that get nonprofit leaders really nervous, right? Our boards really nervous because it costs money. And what if the money isn't recouped? And what if we fail? And we have to embrace, just like the Wright brothers, we have to embrace a feeling of innovation and an understanding that testing is going to result in failure, but we're going to learn from that failure. So we have to ensure that there is, in our own careers and in our fundraising, a cycle of testing and iterating and learning, right? Because as Seth Godin, if I close with the brilliance of Seth Godin, innovation is really just repeated failure. Look at the Wright brothers, right? How many bicycles did they crash before they finally got it? So think about, what else do you need to keep testing before it becomes something that really works? And I encourage you to be that champion. I used that word at the beginning when Lynn was asking me the word that I think about for fundraisers. You be that champion for pushing the envelope, for rattling that cage, for testing, innovating, allowing us to have that courage to fail, and knowing it's okay because we're going to learn something out of it and we're going to grow from that failure. So, Clay, how do we round this out?
I think we sum up. I feel like a little like Inigo Montoya here. Let me explain. No, there's too much. Let us sum up. Lynn?
So the ideas here are concepts that we want you to think about, because we all share a similar experience, although our lives may come from different places and we may live in different spaces. That in the nonprofit world, there are just some simple truths that can help you maneuver through this life with laughter, with smiles, with failing up, which is one of my favorite things to do. I love failing up. But the first is that you've got to take care of yourself. So put your own mask on first, whether it be a sleeping mask so you can catch up on your rest, whether it be a mask to protect yourself, or a mask to give yourself an extra boost of oxygen, or a lovely Venetian mask should you want to have a masquerade. But be yourself, and you're the only you that we've got. So coming authentically, showing up for exactly who you are, and might I add, allowing others to do the same. We must allow people to have civil discourse and dissent in opinions. And it's okay. And I think a lot of the time we are very intolerant of people with different views than ours. And so I want us to be grace-filled when we don't agree. And you can think all the things you want in your head, but remember that at the end of the day, they're a human being, and they have a heart and a soul just like you do. They just come from a different space, in a different place, and a different time. So I really do think that if you're going to be as kind and grace-filled to yourself, you also have to extend that grace to others. And one of my favorite things to do is when people make mistakes, to treat them with the that I sometimes don't give myself. And I really do try to push that forward to people and think instead, how can I extend to this person? Because they're probably like me, just railing on themselves on the inside, and I don't need to add to that. So I don't need to add water to that cup. So the second one, Clay.
Well, and I'm actually going to shift just a tiny bit from what I had planned to say here because of a comment Kristen made about having humor. And as an annual fund director for many, many years, data always landed on my plate. And I always got you can't be a data person and be funny too. It was expected that I be serious and stuffy and boring and talk spreadsheets, right? But data is funny and we're funny. Be you. Be you, because the only way you're going to dream big, the only way you're going to crash bicycles is when you bring that you to it. And you just might find out that going over the mountain isn't such a weird idea after all. It might actually work. And we might actually be able to do it by being who we are authentically. And I'll own, I spent a lot of years of my career trying to be someone I wasn't. Stuffy, dress shirt, suit, very serious, very blah, blah, blah. Yeah, no, doesn't work for me. Works for some, doesn't work for me.
There's no snacks in that, Clay.
There's no snacks. And snacks are life. Bring your authentic you to the dreams, to the bicycles, to the mountains, and to the scary bears, because as Lynn said, you're the only you there is, and we need you, and so do the missions that you serve. Barbara?
Yeah, I would finalize our comments by saying that we've got to live in the and. We've got to be comfortable with knowing that this is not, we don't exist in an either or state. And so our own, we are going to have an and, whether it's, at Lynn's point, extending grace or having expectations. It's and being optimistic and being realistic, being embracing change and preserving stability. There's always going to be an and so we as leaders have got to embrace that and be comfortable in that space and navigating and knowing as well that and is going to also be driven by a little bit of cage rattling. So be courageous to embrace the change, to rattle those cages, and to make our sector even stronger.
Which I think goes back to where we started. Len, I think we were about to say the same thing, because I think we're going right back to where we started, which is the underpinning of all of this, which is
you've got to believe. You've got to believe. And look at that. Clay even made it responsive branded believing there. I
am a clever boy.
Right. He is a smart cookie. I think the last thing is gratitude. Remember, the word we have for you today is gratitude. Thank you for spending your time at the Responsive Nonprofit Summit. Thank you for choosing to give us some time, and also for believing in yourself. Giving gratitude for giving yourself some space and a place to improve. People who attend professional development are it, period. Their organizations are better, their lives are better, and we as a society are better for it. Because if you think I've already got it all taken care of, then you're lost. So we're so grateful that you spent time with the three of us, and that's how to reach us. Thank you all so very much for
being crash a few bicycles, folks.
Yes, on soft surfaces.
On soft surfaces, sand. Yes. And have a snack after.
Yes. Thanks, everyone.
Thank everyone.
All right. Hey, that was amazing. Did your guys' head blow up as well? I mean, there's so much nuggets. I mean, I don't know if you can see my notes, guys. I mean, the Wright brothers, fail forward, Ted Lasso, believe. Put your mask on first, test, innovate, self-care is important, shoot for the moon, land in the stars. Jamie Tart is good looking. I don't know which one of y'all said that. But yeah, I mean, amazing information that you guys put together. Follow them on their, I mean, how many podcasts do all three of you guys have together? I mean, like 10, 12? I mean, follow their podcast. Follow
all of them. One. Basically all.
Follow all of them. They have all the thought leadership. Lean in on them. And it's, thank you. Thank you, you guys. Fantastic.
Beautiful. Thanks, y'all. We couldn't think of a better way to close out the Responsive Nonprofit Summit, but please stay with us just a little bit longer. We're taking a 2-minute break, and we're going to come back. You don't want to miss the closing remarks and the closing session. And once again, just like every other day, we are going to be opening up the backstage at 12 PST, 3 EST, to take all your questions, to digest all the insights one last time. See you back here in 2 minutes.
Thanks, guys.